Hello everyone, thank you for chiming in. This is a new week going over the element of water, and in this element I get to choose a topic to create a discussion around. And my topic of discussion I'm choosing is lucid dreaming and astral projection. The different experiences that I've had, the ways in which to have a lucid dream and have an out-of-body experience. I've been facilitating astral projection classes and workshops for about 4.5 years now, and I've learned a lot throughout the process. I first started doing this because I saw that there wasn't that many facilitators or space holders to teach the different techniques. I always say before I facilitate any class that is regarding astral projection that I'm not a master at this, I'm not a guru at this, so don't label me as that. I'm simply teaching based on what I've learned in my experiences and how the different stages of which to do so. Even myself, I'm not able to do it 100% of the time. And I have a lot of different stories from students that have come to me through the different workshops, either at festivals or at private sessions through the Airbnb experiences that I have. So, that being said, with this discussion, I'm going to kind of have it organized in a similar way of how my workshops are, aside from taking you through the actual practice itself. I feel that the space to be held for a person taking them through it is a little bit different, and in my opinion it requires someone to be there in person to assist, but I'll merely be teaching you the practices and how to do so on your own time in your own space so that you feel comfortable and safe. Okay, so whether you all know it or not, you have all had an out-of-body experience. Let that sink in for a moment. You have all had an out-of-body experience. How do I know that? Because the moment that you close your eyes and you go to sleep, your consciousness, your awareness goes somewhere else. Where does it go? It goes into the dream world, the training ground. And if it goes into a different reality, a different realm, it means that that consciousness is leaving your physical body, and your physical body is now just a placeholder. The analogy that I like to give when I'm doing the classes is, for those of you who ever watched Star Trek. In Star Trek, there is this room called the holodeck room, and in the holodeck room, the holodeck room is a computer simulation. So imagine a room, and there's a door, and the moment that you step foot into that door, the door closes behind you. You're now in a computer simulation of whatever the computer wants to throw at you. And usually it's a program for training in the holodeck room itself. So you're training for something, you're training to do something. Now, the difference between lucid dreaming and astral projection is when you're in that dream space, when you're in that realm, you're not necessarily having a lucid dream, but you are still having an out-of-body. Some of you don't remember it, a good majority of you don't remember it, which is why certain herbs are or can be utilized to jog your memory and to allow you to write down and dream journal afterwards. I'll be going over that as well a little bit later. So all of you have had an out-of-body experience. Some of you may have had a conscious one, whereas you may be lying in bed and you're flat on your back and you're right there almost asleep, and you're in that in-between stage where you start hearing certain things and certain guidances and certain epiphanies come through, and all of a sudden, whoa, just jumped up, and you're looking around because it felt like you fell through the bed. That moment, if you would have surrendered to that feeling of falling, you would have had a conscious out-of-body experience. You would have been able to step out of the body and go somewhere else, maybe for a split second, but you would have been somewhere. So, going back now to the holodeck room, the differences between lucid dreaming and astral projection. Now that you recognize that you're in that dream world, that you're in the holodeck room, you're in a training ground, there's certain ways that you can program yourself to step out of the training ground, to step out of the simulation, to step out of that particular dream. And one way that I've discovered for myself that works best to have a lucid dream is periodically throughout your day, you ask yourself a question. And the question is, am I dreaming right now? Is this a dream? And as you do so, look around the room and see if you are dreaming. Maybe if you can remember, look at your hands. And as you're doing this throughout your day, whether you're driving, whether you're cooking, whether you're cleaning, whether you're doing work, ask yourself mentally the question, am I dreaming right now? Is this a dream? And what you're essentially doing is you're programming your subconscious mind so that when you're in that dream state, you ask that question. And from that point, you have a lucid dream. And from the lucid dream point, sky's the limit of what you can do or experience. And a bit of forewarning, when and if you do decide to go this path and do dream yoga, is what it's called, a lot of your carnal desires, a lot of your primal urges, whether it be from sexual, from domineering is the word, I think, wanting to feel power, wanting to feel whole, like all these different things that are underlying within you, they will all begin to play out in the lucid dream state, because now you have full awareness and capacity to do anything you want with the current mindset that you have and the current consciousness that you have. So you'll be playing out a lot of different scenarios and mastering that for quite a while. Now, one of the ways to have an out-of-body through a lucid dream, which this way that I'm about to describe is, in my opinion, probably the more difficult way to have an out-of-body experience. But it's possible. There are people that I've read of and that have people that have spoken to me that have had this experience utilizing it the way that I'm about to describe it to you. So once you ingrain and you program in yourself that you can lucid dream, and you've programmed that within your subconscious, you can then realize that you're in a simulation, and because you have the awareness that you're in a simulation, you can then create a door in that simulation, which is the door to the holodeck room, to go back to the ship or to go back to the regular environment. And you would go through the door, you would walk through it, and now you would be next to your bed, or you'd be next to where your body would be. From there, then you have multiple different options of what to do with the out-of-body experience, because now you're in a completely different space. You're no longer in that particular training ground that is going to teach you things, which I'll be getting into what I mean by that, because that in itself is a topic to talk about. Okay, so that is one of the ways to have an out-of-body through the lucid dream state. One of the herbs that I would highly recommend that you look into is mugwort, M-U-G-W-O-R-T, and simply because this herb helps with dream recollection, and it helps with creating lucid dreams. A bit of forewarning with that particular herb, though, that if you are a pregnant woman, do not drink that tea, because it will cause complications with the baby. So that being said, I highly recommend you go and get some mugwort somewhere. Find it on eBay. It's very cheap. I think it's like $15 for a pound, which you're not even going to get that much, but you can get like an ounce for maybe like $5, and that'll last you quite a while. So you can start programming your dreams and being mindful of the dreams. Now, the next thing I'm going to get into is what I mean about the dream space, what I mean about the training ground. So because we are infinite beings, the emotions that we feel in this reality, and the things that trigger us, or the things that reveal, it's better this be said, the things that are revealed to us through other people, and all of a sudden we feel an emotion because of it, whether it be anger, sadness, jealousy, insecurity, rage, all those whatever emotions that are the negative aspects of emotions that you see them as. If you don't address them within yourself, and instead you decide to project them and push them onto someone else, you are now creating a thing called a thought form. What's a thought form? A thought form is these beings that are generated based on the emotional output of things you don't address. And each time you don't address those emotions, that particular thought form gets more empowered with that particular emotion. So say, for example, me, in my past, I was picked on and bullied all throughout high school, right? Which is true. And I had all this anger that I haven't addressed. If I don't address it, the thought form of anger in the astral realm, in that space, will be very powerful when you actually encounter it. Which also, because you don't address those emotions here, you now have to play out an experience in the dream world, in the training ground, somewhere that's not here because you're not addressing it here. It has to play out somewhere else where your consciousness is. So I'll give you an example of a training ground emotional experience that if you don't address it here will get played out there. Me, in my past, from a breakup, it really hurt me a lot, and I held on to a lot of sadness. And because I didn't release that sadness, and because I didn't want to feel that sadness at that time, I then, in my dream space, in my training ground, would create experiences or scenarios where I would have to feel my sadness. I would have to look at my sadness. And then when I would wake up, I would wake up crying. And those are very powerful moments for me to reflect, to remind myself, oh shit, I'm actually not doing the work right now. I'm just running away from something. And it then has to get played out there. Same with fear, same with anger. If you're not addressing it here, it has to play out somewhere else. And that's just what I've learned of what happens in the training ground, in the dream space. And I love the training ground. I love the dream space because you get to learn so many different lessons, and it's just never ending. It's like layers and layers and layers. Once you finally learn a lesson, and then you move on to the next one, right? So going back to thought forms, when and if you do have an out-of-body experience, there may be instances where you come across certain thought forms, and when you first look at them or when you first witness them, they may just appear, and I'm talking from my experience, they may just appear as a ball of light. But the moment that your awareness is placed on it, now that it's aware that you are aware of it, it will now shift to whatever that thought form was programmed to be. So for example, if it's anger, it is now going to shift into something that will attempt to bring out anger within you. So for me, I'll talk about a fear thought form that I had. When I first started having out-of-body experiences and lucid dreams, I would come across these beings that looked very demonic. And at first I would run away from it because I was like, fuck that. I'm not gonna deal with that shit. And little by little, I started gaining the courage of facing it. And by facing it, I would fight it. I would do all these weird shit like throwing balls of energy at it. And I would come back into my body and I would feel very drained, like as if I had actually been doing work and stressing my physical body out. So then I had spoken to a mentor of mine, and I let them know the situation. He's like, why don't you just accept it that it's a part of you and let it know how loved and seen and appreciated it is. So I did that. And I did it to the fear thought form. And the moment I did it to the fear thought form, it reintegrated into me. It went into my body, merged with my being, and completed an aspect of me. This is a very amazing way to heal aspects of yourself and trauma when you don't want to heal it in this realm. We can just as easily heal it in this realm, but there, in that space, in the astral realm, you may come across the actual physical or in that space it's physical, like a physical representation, but it's not that. But you're actually able to see it for what it is, rather than have a concept and actually feel what it is. So that's a little bit of forewarning that you may come across thought forms. And on that note, You may come across thought forms that aren't even yours. And because they're now in your awareness, it is now your responsibility to integrate it and transmute it. So be mindful when and if you come across that. You may not come across it the first couple times. The next thing I want to go into is when you finally do have an out-of-body, when you first experience it, a number of things may happen. After I go through the different stages of how to do so, like, you may get to that point, but what may happen, the first thing is, you may be super excited. You're like, oh, I'm doing it, I'm having an out-of-body. And then because you felt the emotion of excitement, the extreme emotion, you have now anchored yourself back into your body. It's like, yes, I'm doing it. Oh, I'm back. And because of that, it's now going to be very difficult to get back into that stage within a certain time frame again. If it does happen that way, I personally recommend you take a break, come back to it later, and do it as a practice continuously. Second thing that may happen, because the first thing was excitement, the second thing now is fear. All right, you're laying down, all of a sudden you feel yourself, like the awareness separating from your physical body, like, oh shit, what is this? I don't know what this is. Then you jolt back in your body. And again, same thing as the first one. Now you have to take a break because getting back into that space may be a little bit difficult. So take a break. The third thing, which is the better one out of the two, in my opinion, is you have the out-of-body and you keep your excitement in check and you keep your fear in check, and now you're able to venture and go do whatever it is that you want. More than likely, you're gonna get pulled to a certain direction. You're gonna get pulled because you may not have the awareness on how to move in that space yet. So there's that. Now, the next concept I want to talk about in this is protection. A lot of times in the classes that I facilitate, the question gets asked, what about protecting yourself from beings going into your physical body? So, with that, if you already signed on to the belief that you create your reality, that is to say that you believe you create your reality 100% of the time. Okay? You signed on to that belief. You've heard it in the spiritual community. Do you live it? If you don't live it, and even if you do live it, because you feel you have to protect yourself from anything outside of yourself, you're now going to have to create an experience in which you have to protect yourself from. So, that being said, see if you could wean yourself little by little out of getting the story out of your head that you have to protect yourself. Because if you lived in your authentic form and you lived in your unconditional love that you are, nothing, no experience, nothing would ever be able to harm you or do anything to you that wasn't of your highest expression to learn from. So, for example, if you still believe that you have to protect yourself or you have to use crystals that protect you in some way, stay in that field for a little bit. But play with it little by little. Like, if you think that you have to wear an onyx crystal for protection of bad energy, see if you can go a day without that. See what happens. Same in the astral realm. In the beginning, surround yourself in a white light before you go into the stages that I'm about to describe. Surround yourself in a white light. That's it. Just create something that where your physical mind or your analytical mind, your logic, feels safe. Without you creating that thing that you feel safe in, you're not going to have the out-of-body experience. It's like an oyster, like a clam. A clam's going to stay shut if it doesn't feel safe. So you start convincing the logical mind that by me creating a field of white light, nothing can harm me. Now the clam begins to open. and there's a pearl inside. Okay, so, and little by little, see if you can play with not having to use those methods. There's also a mantra in my classes that I have people recite, regardless if they believe they have to protect themselves or not. And the mantra is, you say it 3 times out loud or in your head before you do the 4 stages I'm going to go into. And that is, only those beings of positive light and vibration may enter into my space. Only those beings of positive light and vibration may enter into my space. Only those beings of positive light and vibration may enter into my space. So you do all these things, and realistically, you're only doing those things to convince your logical-sided mind that you're safe, which you always are anyways, because everything is just an aspect of you. But I digress. Make sure you address where you're at mentally in that, okay? Otherwise, you may create an experience that may put a bad taste in your mouth, I guess I can say. So now I'm going to go into the 4 stages of astral projection. First stage is relaxation. It's the stage in which many people have difficulty in experiencing. And relaxation stage is, you find a comfortable position on your bed. Make sure no one's around that's going to bother you. There's no noises that's going to bother you. And during this process, I would even recommend listening with the headphones, binaural beats of whatever frequency you want. With that being said, I would recommend actually third eye binaural beats or solar plexus. So you're laying still. This is still stage 1. You're laying still on the bed. As you're laying on the bed, see if you can make it a practice where you stay as still as possible. You refrain from itching. You refrain from moving. You refrain from moving micro movements. Like, all right, all of a sudden, I'm going to move that finger. Oh, no, my nose itches. I'm going to do this. Oh, I got to do this. And you notice that the more still your body is, the more you have a tendency of wanting to itch or fidget or move. I personally ask myself this question when I'm in those stages, and this is the answer that I received. Our body operates similarly to a camera. When you take a photo of something in a nighttime environment, you leave the aperture open for a certain period of time so that you can absorb more light and you can see more. Our bodies operate in a similar way, where when you keep the body still enough, you begin to feel energies or aspects of yourself that you normally wouldn't be feeling because you're always in a movement state. You're always in like a jittery state. Another way to say it is you're beginning to feel your meridian system, the meridian lines of the body. And what that tells me, if we are actually feeling our energetic sensations, if we are actually feeling our energetic sensations, it means that we're actually feeling blockages in our body. All of those movements of micro movements or wanting to itch a certain location, you're using one form of energy to move another form of energy. And if you Google, no 2 objects ever physically touch, what then touches? It's energy. So even though it looks like I'm touching here, there's still space in between my fingertips. And by me moving my fingers like this, I'm just moving one energy with the other. The same as when you have an itching sensation, when you're laying down in the relaxation stage. So instead of physically itching that location, see if you could mentally create a thought form, meaning a visualization, as you're laying still, refraining from itching or moving. See if you can create a form of which you think of where you see that itching sensation go away. Maybe you see yourself, maybe you see like water going through the arms and there's a dam there where the itching sensation is. And see yourself increasing the pressure of the water to break through the dam. All right, all of a sudden the water is now flowing freely throughout the whole body. That itching sensation now goes away. That's just one way to visualize it. Okay, so play with that. And that's basically stage one, is doing your best to keep the body still. Because every single time you move your body in a micro movement or an itching sensation, you are actually dispersing the energy of what you could be feeling fully. Stage one is relaxation, relaxing the body, staying still. Stage two is now vibration stage. What ends up happening, because you keep your body still now, you are beginning to feel those subtle sensations that I mentioned. Some of you may feel pressure at the top of your head. Some of you, your temperature may drop because you're starting to be in a completely different space vibrationally. Some of you may experience tingly sensations on your fingertips, on your hands, on the tops of your hands, on your feet. Some of you may feel tingly sensations throughout your whole body. Ideally, that's what you want to feel, is tingly sensations throughout the whole body. That's vibration. You're going to feel the vibration because your body is still now. And you are being mindful and you're being alert of how it's doing that. Between stage one and stage two, what I like to do is yoga nidra. If you don't know what yoga nidra is, go on YouTube after this video and type in yoga nidra. Essentially, what yoga nidra is, and actually that just gave me an idea for another video. I'm gonna create another video for yoga nidra. But essentially, what yoga nidra is, a person is speaking, and they tell you to focus on a portion of your body, your right thumb. All right, now focus on your index finger, now middle finger, now ring finger, pinky finger. And you're going through each portion of the body as you're keeping the body still. And mentally, when you're focusing on each portion of the body, you're letting that portion of the body know it's now time to relax, it's now time to let go, it's now time to surrender. This is doing multiple things. One, you're developing your willpower to keep still and to keep focused. Because if you're not focused and you're thinking about your bills, or you're thinking about your lover or loved one, or whatever it is, your job, you're not being present. This practice of yoga nidra is training you to have willpower, to develop willpower. The second thing it's going to do, it's going to keep your mind occupied so that if any other thoughts come through, you bring your focus back to the point of which is mentioned. So stage one is relaxation, body still. Stage two, vibration. Stage three is visualization. Once you finally feel a tingling sensation or pressure at the top of your head, or that subtle vibration, that subtle sensation that you may have not felt before, that's when you move into visualization. Visualization here is different for everyone, okay? I call them keys because you utilize a certain key to open the gateway to have the out-of-body itself. So you have to find what your key is. In all of the workshops I facilitate, the key that I share is recreating a second version of yourself wearing the same clothes that you're wearing, laying down in the same position that you're laying down in, having the same hair, having the same jewelry on, and that version is laying down. Now, as you recreate that in the mind, you are now visualizing that version of you rising or falling into the ground. And if you're choosing the rising aspect, I encourage people to think of a memory when you jumped up in the air when you were a child, that sensation of jumping up in the air and then coming back down, the in-between stage. It's like up in the air and back down. Remember what that felt like and see if you can assign that feeling of jumping up in the air to that second version of yourself as you're rising and as you're falling. That's the key that I facilitate. Now, what I learned by training people with that key is that everyone has their own unique key. I didn't know this in the beginning. I was just teaching what my key was and what was working for me. And I come to find that everyone has their own unique key because everyone is a unique individual of perception of reality. So someone's key could be, after you feel the vibration, if you're a comic book fan and you like Spider-Man, you visualize yourself shooting a web out of your wrist up to the ceiling, and you're grabbing the web and you're pulling yourself out of your body. That's one key. Another key could be, and actually this happened in a couple of my workshops, is there was people that asked for their deceased relative to pull them up out of their body. They were visualizing them, they were seeing them, and they were seeing them getting pushed out. Another one actually asked for their spirit guides to lift them up out of their body. So again, play with your key. Figure out what key works for you. You may not get it in the first couple attempts. That's why this is a practice. Keep at it though. Now, once you find your key and you're in the visualization, stage 3, what's going to happen from that is stage 4, the final stage, the out of body itself. So you have that experience, you either are excited, fearful, or neutral. The neutral is what you're after. The other two is not. By going through those other two, you're going to force yourself back into your body because now you're excited or fearful. So those are essentially the stages of having an out of body. There are times in which to utilize these things, these experiences or tools, like the best times of the day. The best times of the day are when you either first wake up or throughout the day when you're in a complete alert state, or at nighttime between 2 and 4 in the morning. Or if you're a coffee drinker, drink coffee before you do it. The reason is because if you're not alert and aware, going from stage 1 to stage 2, you may fall asleep. And the goal of this is to be alert and conscious and awake the entire time when you're going through these stages, so that you can be present of how the body is operating and becoming heavier and still being alert of that separation process. So that's basically what I know so far in astral projection and lucid dreaming. I am going to be creating another video because it just came to me, the yoga nidra, and maybe you can combine that video with your personal practice of astral projection and lucid dreaming. Again, I hope this video is well received and that some of you decide to go on this journey. You can also, something before I close out, you can also combine sigil magic with astral projection and lucid dreaming. You create a sigil that now every time that you draw this sigil on your hand or on your body, it means that you're creating a space for that to happen. So that's like another way that you can experience an astral projection and lucid dreaming. If you don't know what sigil magic is, I recommend you go down to my video list and look for the ones that says sigils in it, and do a little research on that. Or just look at another random video. It's up to you. So thank you everyone for watching this video and taking the time out of your day to learn a little bit more about lucid dreaming and astral projection. And I am on my way now tomorrow to Atlanta to facilitate an astral projection and lucid dreaming class, a ritual magic class, and a human connection class at a festival called Imagine in Atlanta. So I look forward to seeing you all if you are in Atlanta, and thank you so much for participating in this video. Thanks.